Neon Night Forever, The Legacy of Joel Schumacher's Batman Duology. Written by Tomasz Zagluski. Narrated by Drew Griffin. For my Bat family and all the Bat people out there who still proudly have Bat credit cards in their pockets. We open with an excerpt from the U2 song, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me. Dressing like your sister, living like a tart. They don't know what you're doing. Babe, it must be art. You're a headache. In a suitcase, you're a star. Followed by a quote from Joel Schumacher. It's my Gotham City, and if I want Batman to have nipples, he's going to have nipples. Some acknowledgments from the author. I have always loved the Batman character, but I have never truly enjoyed Batman as Dark Knight. Some may see it as quite a weird way to start a Batman-centered monograph, but for me it is the crowning of the years of being a Batman fan, a fan of a very specific Batman. As with most Bat enthusiasts out there in their 30s and 40s right now, I started my Bat-related escapade with the original Tim Burton 1989 blockbuster as experienced through countless VHS replays. The very first truly conscious movie experience of my life. However, with the 1995 Batman Forever and its sequel from 1997, a different kind of Batmania had its impact on me. I can clearly remember seeing Batman Forever as my very first Batman feature in cinema in September 1995 with my dad. It was an awe-inspiring cinematic spectacle screened in a local movie theater called Przedwiośnie in my hometown of Plock, an average Polish city, which for 2 hours become a neon-laden and quite maniacal vision of Gotham City, populated by extravagant characters. I really embraced this bizarre take on Batman's universe, although even then it struck me as radically different than the more stoic version delivered by Burton. For years and decades I have tried to cultivate privately this memory of Schumacher's constantly mocked vision come true. And now this volume finally becomes my opportunity to articulate my thoughts about that curious neon night, and its constantly suspended presence in the conceptual space in between. Too campy for the serious Batman lovers, and too serious for the followers of the Adam West-based comedic crusader. As this book finally approaches completion, I would like to thank the team at Bloomsbury, especially Katie Golliff, Stephanie Grace Patinos, and Alyssa Jordan, for seeing something valuable in this particular project and helping me pursue this effort to the end. My gratitude is also due to all colleagues at my home institution, the Institute of Cultural Studies at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, with the necessary organizational support that was substantial for my work with this publication. The process of preparing this manuscript was financially supported by Adam Mickiewicz University's research program. I would like to thank my secret collaborator, Shimon Nowak, who was the very first reader of this manuscript and was an invaluable source of all initial linguistic revisions. I want to express as well special thanks to all the social media creators and researchers whose work was used in my analysis, especially Neil Rickatson from 1995batman.com, all the stuff from the following YouTube channels: Superhero Stuff You Should Know, V Infuso, Score PN, Channel Pup, Salazar Knight, I Don't Beat Games, Modern Girls, Cortex Videos, and the administrators and users of the Joel Schumacher dedicated groups on Facebook, Joel Schumacher Was Right, and Joel Schumacher Fan Page. I owe a very special thank you to my mom and dad, who in my earliest childhood prompted and patiently nurtured the process which yielded this particular book, supplying me with countless comic books, VHS tapes, video games, action figures, and cinematic experiences that culminated in the pages that follow. Last but not least, I would like to thank my wife, my daughter, and my yet-to-be-born son who will come into the world as this book reaches bookstores. It is an ugly truth that every book is written by both the author and their family, who have to bear with the creative process in daily life. I am very grateful for having my own Bat family on my side, with my own Catwoman, Batgirl, and Robin in the very center. Finally, I feel the need to thank the protagonist of this publication, the late Joel Schumacher himself, for having fueled my imagination and the spark that has inspired my private interests, as well as professional activities of a superhero-centered consumer and academic researcher alike. It is unlikely that he would have ever thought that the very first monograph dedicated to his conception of the Neon Knight would be written by a scholar from a distant Central European country. Still, I hope that he would have enjoyed it, as I have scrupulously tried to comprehend and elucidate the essence of his unique and unorthodox foray into the Batman's lore. The following analysis of the Neon Knight is not intended to convince anyone of the superior quality of his motion pictures, but rather to highlight their cultural applicability, which does not have to be tied with an objectively accepted artistic greatness. I think Joel Schumacher would have agreed with that statement. Tomasz Zagluski, Poznan, October 26, 2022. Introduction, or Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir? In 2009, Kevin Feige, the spiritus movens of the perennially successful Marvel Cinematic Universe, and one of the architects behind the modern renaissance of the superhero trend in popular culture, made a meaningful comment concerning the importance of Joel Schumacher's second Batman movie, 1997's Batman and Robin, and its contribution to the rise of the Caped Crusader phenomenon in film. Quote, Batman and Robin may be the most important comic book movie ever made. It was so bad that it demanded a new way of doing things. It created the opportunity to do X-Men and Spider-Man, adaptations that respected the source material and adaptations that were not campy. End quote. This clearly ironic appraisal of Schumacher's second endeavor in the superhero franchise offers at least several interesting insights into the general perception, or misperception, of the peculiar vision of on-screen heroic feature, which materialized in 1997 and 2 years earlier, with Schumacher's Batman-centric debut in Batman Forever. Even though Feige himself deserves credit for envisioning the narrative structures and themes of superhero films since the first Iron Man released in 2008, some critical feedback is surely in order to address his patronizing view of Batman and Robin's final form, one that is still appreciated by many and deserves to be redefined today. However, after almost 30 years since the premiere of Joel Schumacher's first Batman cinematic adventure, it is still difficult to maintain a serious discussion about these features, as for many viewers and critics alike, Schumacher's Bat films are simply too aesthetically unconventional, or conceptually unserious to be compared with modern cases of superhero cinema. The truth is that probably the best depiction of Schumacher's troubling work with the Caped Crusader was given by the director himself and through the words of the mischievous The Riddler in Batman Forever, when the supervillain played by Jim Carrey enters the hideout of the film's second antagonist, Tommy Lee Jones's Harvey Two-Face Dent, driven by his split nature, both psychologically and visually, with the following phrase for his soon-to-be partner in crime. I simply love what you've done with the place. Heavy metal meets house and garden. Splendid. It's so dark and gothic and disgustingly decadent, yet so bright and chipper and conservative. Very few people are both a summer and a winter, but you pull it off nicely. Knowing the final forms of both Schumacher's movies, it's hard not to see here a camouflaged definition of the director's take on both the character and the Batman franchise at the same time, as well as the main point of concern for the majority of Batman fans unwilling to embrace this stylistic hybrid of a post-Tim Burton legacy and this improper, much brighter and comedic input. Putting Joel Schumacher in the footsteps of Burton in June 1993, after the mammoth financial success of Burton's first Batman in 1989, and the much more controversial yet still profitable Batman Returns from 1992, may be seen today as a nonsensical move for the Warner Brothers studio, as the new director clearly abandoned the depressive and gothic, yet critically welcomed, version of Gotham City and moved into the territory of making Batman fun and colorful again, just as in the infamous Adam West television show in 1966. Nevertheless, it is crucial to remember here that by doing so, Schumacher actually realized the studio's main mandate for him to re-energize the series into proper blockbuster-like family entertainment after the concerns of the 1992 Batman Returns. The 1995 release had gained over $52 million at the American box office and a record-breaking 3-day opening with a total worldwide haul of $336,529,000. This also gave Schumacher the opportunity to explore new territory for the comic book Avenger in his very own taste and style. And perhaps this personal take is the very thing that makes this discussion about Joel Schumacher's Batman so troublesome to maintain. As until now, there was really a very limited interest in trying to understand what the director was actually trying to do with Batman and his mythology. This book will try to fill that void, and hopefully won't be naive but insightful, like Dr. Chase Meridian's own work, crudely reviewed in that way by Batman in Batman Forever. The best place to start is to consider the striking contrast in the elements that Schumacher used in his Batman formula. The decadent Gothic motives with an optimistic, even humorous view. The difficulties with understanding Joel Schumacher's Batman may be the result of this seemingly impossible combination of extremes. The extremes within an utterly eclectic style and an all-over-the-place tone. The critics' reception. Quentin Curtis from The Independent praised Schumacher for being a better storyteller than Burton, and hitting on a more consistent house acting style, halfway between cartoon and realism. While Gene Siskel complained that Batman and Robin was a sniggering, exhausting, overproduced extravaganza that has virtually all of the humanity pounded out of it in the name of an endless parade of stunt sequences. Competitive financial revenues. The impressive gross of Batman Forever was challenged by the financial underperformance of 1997's Batman and Robin with its final $238,207,000 global result. And filmgoers' unbalanced memory about these films, unfairly focusing on the nitpicked visual details, like the scandalous nipples on Batman's costume, and not the actual meaning of Schumacher's duology. This is why it is essential to finally rediscover these films in the context of a modern superhero renaissance in the media, and understand their original structure as well as their surprising legacy, which becomes more and more visible in specific film projects today. There are at least two major points in Kevin Feige's statement from the beginning of this chapter that require a radical redefinition given the technically and artistically changing landscape of superhero-based entertainment, as well as the newly rediscovered need for the largest superhero-centered conglomerates to address a wide range of aesthetical, cultural, and political patterns which can be integrated in these fantastic superhero narratives. As odd as it may sound at this point, the legacy of Joel Schumacher's personal and peculiar touch on the Batman character still casts a long shadow, reaching the most financially successful or critically acclaimed recent superhero releases, such as the big-budgeted blockbuster of 2022, Thor: Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi, or films like Cathy Yan's Birds of Prey or the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn from 2019. Somewhat more economically modest, yet much more ambitious in terms of the encoded concepts. The first thing that should be asserted in response to Feige's comments about the role of Schumacher's vision is that the new way of doing things had actually come full circle over the years and, apparently, returned to the extravagant modality which was once, in the early 2000s, treated as a misguided strategy of making superhero adventures campy, both visually and/or thematically. It is quite unfortunate that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man from 2002 is actually mentioned as an uncampy feature alongside Bryan Singer's much more down-to-earth and serious treatment of X-Men 2000. Especially since today it is genuinely hard to not look at Raimi's effort as a direct continuation of the campy wave of superhero cinema with just a slightly more realistic tone than the one proposed in the disparaged Batman and Robin feature. Another element from Feige's statement which deserves a response here is as difficult as it is compelling to unpack since it involves less visible qualities and clearly subjective reflections about one's notions of good or bad interpretation as well as right or wrong approach towards a given character or the overall concept of superhero narratives, their themes, tone, and finally its visual form. In just a few short sentences, Kevin Feige delivers an almost ideal summary of the general understanding of Joel Schumacher's Batman films by encapsulating all these common assumptions into a single straightforward phrase. It was so bad. It is not difficult to imagine the most popular opinions or beliefs one could gather in a public survey on the contemporary reception of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. People would mention the infamous rubber nipples, cite inferior one-liners and silly catchphrases provided by the absurdly cartoony villains, discuss the dominance of style over substance, the not-so-ambiguous gay subtext, the essential lack of some serious tones in the story, etc. In other words, one would consider that basically the Schumacher movies do not evince the right approach towards the Batman character, nor do they epitomize the right idea of superhero cinema in general. However, Joel Schumacher's Batman duology is a perfect and insufficiently explored case study for cultural research, an opportunity to examine the use of right and wrong arguments with respect to single superhero-oriented texts, and the strategies of employing either adjective in the changing context of time, the evolving perception of superhero movies, as well as the constantly growing inventory of modern features, in terms of which Schumacher's perspectives may still be viewed as desirable or unwelcome by specific audiences. This is the case with the aforementioned Thor: Love and Thunder, produced by Marvel Studios, which met something of a backlash from fans and critics for being too Schumacher-like, in terms of its aesthetic aspect and the disrespectful portrayal of the main character. In an article posted on MovieWeb.com, tellingly titled, "Is Thor: Love and Thunder the MCU's Batman and Robin?" the author Richard Fink makes a few observations about the most obvious parallels between Waititi's and Schumacher's movies. They represent the fourth installments in the ongoing franchise, use the conjunction "and" in the title, and portray the main antagonist as a central villain who is motivated by a loved one's tragic ending, but where both villains eventually realize the errors of their way and finding their humanity. Still, the text formulates several more detailed assumptions and accusations that establish a seemingly tight artistic link between Thor: Love and Thunder and Batman and Robin as a means of direct critique, which it may be worthwhile to quote more extensively. Quote, "Both Batman and Robin and Thor: Love and Thunder were highly anticipated sequels before their releases, and each had huge opening weekends. Yet word of mouth from audiences and critics was less kind. A common complaint about both films is that they essentially doubled down on what made the previous film work without providing anything different. Thor: Love and Thunder increased the comedy of Thor: Ragnarok, with more jokes often giving the vibe of sketch comedy or an improv group tying together the plot, which makes sense considering just how much improvisation went on during production. However, the comedy clashes with the source material that the film is adapting, primarily the dark Gore the God Butcher story and Jane Foster's Mighty Thor storylines from the comics, which are a much more serious affair. Aside from both being the fourth solo film for a superhero and being the sequel to a course correction entry. Another interesting element both films share is a strange tonal balance. Batman and Robin and Thor: Love and Thunder both focus on comedic elements while also featuring a major character suffering a life-threatening disease which clashes with the overall tone. A film can juggle a variety of tones, but it does become hard to take the more dramatic moments seriously when the rest of the film has been winking and trying to make the audience laugh. In Batman and Robin, the subplot of Alfred dying feels at odds with the throwback nature toward the 1960s series, while in Thor: Love and Thunder, the cancer storyline seems disconnected from both the loose comedy and the dark main villain, and feels worthy of a story on its own." End quote. To sum up Fink's concerns, the crucial elements include joking up, which apparently constitutes an unwanted approach to Marvel's God of Thunder and DC's Dark Knight, as well as the stylistically and thematically convoluted storylines which rely on over-the-top humor and more serious topics in a manner that is impossible to reconcile, according to the article at least, and prevents either from easily being either comedy or drama, since an effort to achieve a hybrid form is supposedly distressing to the viewer's perception. In the broad discourse concerning Thor: Love and Thunder, Fink's text is no exception, especially in social media content such as memes, GIFs, or YouTube comments, which soon after the premiere iterated the critical narrative about the disproportionate mixture of laughs and drama, as well as echoing the overtly negative reception of Waititi's vision of Thor, whom many fans actually found to become a character to laugh at, not laugh with. Exemplifying such a response is a meme posted on a Facebook group called I blank love films, TV, and theater on July 9th, 2022 by one user. The graphic collage featured 4 movie posters, from the 2018 Thor Ragnarok directed by Taika Waititi, Thor: Love and Thunder, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin, with a rather direct commentary. Quote, Thor Ragnarok is like Batman Forever, being different from the first two installments by adding more color and humor for a decent balance, making it very entertaining. Thor Love and Thunder is like Batman and Robin, going so ridiculously overboard with the humor and craziness that it ruined the characters in the movie itself. It is obvious then that Joel Schumacher's legacy of Batman movies is still exploited as a negative reference to certain modern films that, just like the Schumacher features, erroneously head towards frivolous depictions of their characters, or even the entire story worlds, in fact, or upset the acceptable hierarchy of both comedy and drama by amplifying either or both to such an unbalanced degree that the originally unrealistic and quite cartoony characters become too cartoony. Nonetheless, it would be unfair to highlight only the mocked aspect of Schumacher's presence in superhero discourse today, since recent years have seen a new wave of appreciation for his aesthetic taste and personal interpretation of Batman lore gains more and more enthusiasts among real-life and online social groups. The movement grew substantially more conspicuous and vocal in 2021 following the promise of a so-called Schumacher's Cut, a significantly longer, approximately 170 minutes, and apparently more director-oriented original version of Batman Forever, which was semi-officially announced by Akiva Goldsman, the screenwriter of both Joel Schumacher's Batman flicks. Goldsman himself tried to hype up the potential release. Quote, "By the way, Batman Forever still has a renaissance coming. I really am interested to see whether the original cut of Batman Forever comes out because I got to see it recently, the very first one, which was Preview Cut 1. It was really dark. It was a pretty psychological exploration of guilt and shame. I have it on pretty good authority that there exists in the Warner Bros. Vault a 170-minute cut of Batman Forever. I think that it went much deeper into his, Bruce Wayne's, childhood psychosis and his mental blocks, and that it was a more serious, darker version of that movie that was one of the first assemblies that Joel filed with the studio, and they eventually cut it down because they were like, it's too dark for kids. We gotta sell these Happy Meals, so maybe let's not invest ourselves in the trauma of childhood murder. We've got Jim Carrey. Let him do some shit." As strange as this idea of a dark and serious version of Batman Forever may sound for those critics whose reception of Joel Schumacher's work still revolves around its being fun and campy, the preview of Schumacher's cut in 2021 rekindled public attention in that particular version of Batman in the wake of Joel Schumacher's passing on June 22, 2020. One could say that this renewed interest for the once easily ridiculed Batman Forever may have stemmed from Goldsman's assurance of the film having been fixed, specifically by bringing back the darkness into the Dark Knight's 1995 story and giving the audience the proper Batman, the brooding vigilante who constitutes the quintessential image of that particular character. Despite the possibility that the final Batman Forever would move away from its original form, and the enduring imagery of Schumacher's Batman, various media reports in 2021 noted growing interest in Schumacher's cut as another likely case of delivering an author-oriented vision of a film following popular demand, right after the efforts of the Release the Snyder Cut Twitter movement culminated in releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2021. A global social media event to support the Release the Schumacher Cut campaign was launched on June 16, 2021 on Twitter. As of June 2023, the official Twitter account dedicated to this project had gained over 10,000 followers and became the space of constant celebration of Joel Schumacher's Batman legacy, as users tenaciously petitioned Warner Bros. Studios executives to have them officially release Batman Forever's extended version. The Twitter account also shared lots of Schumacher-related content with the community, including fan-made merchandise, Batman-related memorabilia, Schumacher's private appreciation posts and favorites images, and scenes and memories from the generally infamous nippled era of the Gotham City hero's presence on screen. Just as with Zack Snyder's Justice League, the leading figures of the Release the Schumacher Cut community entertained the same hope that the unseen material would become available through Warner's streaming platform services or standalone Blu-ray DVD editions, whose fan-designed covers and collector's boxes circulated widely in associated social media accounts and profiles. Perhaps the most notable achievement associated with the Still Perspective extended feature is not the film itself, but the gradual social recovery process which is quite palpable in today's perception of Joel Schumacher's Batman movies. a recovery that in fact involves a revival of interest in this still widely controversial and rejected idea of a superhero's portrayal deriving from a single author's strong personal vision. As Anthony Lund perversely asks in his remarks about the release the Schumacher cut trend, ever since Warner Brothers seemingly gave in to demand, bowed down to fans, and released the fabled Snyder Cut of Justice League, many fans have taken this to mean that creating enough noise on social media can get the same reaction for any movie. Whether the decision to release Zack Snyder's version of the DC blockbuster was truly down to fan power or was the plan all along, is something that will probably never be entirely known. But that won't stop fans of the 90s Dark Knight offering of Batman Forever joining together on 16th of June to demand Joel Schumacher's first cut of the movie be released in the form of, wait for it, the Schumacher cut. Well, who saw that name coming? The recent resurgence of Joel Schumacher's Batman can surely be seen in online activities and the growing public awareness of the features once rejected for being too silly or too colorful. Also, it makes minor yet quite meaningful attempts to become once again a fully accepted part of the officially supported canon of Batman mythology. In Detective Comics number 1052, published in February 2022, the regular readers of Batman comics faced a rather unexpected cameo appearance of a secondary character from Schumacher's Dark Knight film features. In the sixth part of a story entitled The Tower, written by Mariko Tamaki and illustrated by Max Rayner, the opening scene presented Batman fans with an easily identifiable depiction of a young blonde woman in a doctor's gown hanging from a large antenna shaped like a question mark. Although the setting was a little rearranged, it was an obvious nod to the perils of Dr. Chase Meridian, played in Schumacher's Batman Forever by the Australian actress Nicole Kidman, who had been in similar plight in the finale of her blockbuster debut. Following Mariko Tamaki's narrative, the readers discovered that female protagonist was in fact a comic book incarnation of the earlier cinematic heroine, with minor alterations to the original character design. In this new iteration, Tamaki's Dr. Meridian was not Batman's love interest as such, but a girlfriend of the villainous The Riddler's former fiancé, who dumped the criminal for Chase. Despite all the necessary updates, the very fact that a mainstream comic book storyline actually reused a seemingly expendable figure from a widely disregarded cinematic work may be seen as yet another indication that elements originating from Schumacher are reclaimed into Batman mythology and may be canonized through artistic decisions and fan reception alike. It seems that the residues of both Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are now penetrating into this acceptable space of thematic and aesthetic overhaul, as presented in Detective Comics number 1052, where the film's legacies are built upon with a modern twist and sensitivity. According to a reviewer from CBR.com, this refurbished image of the psychiatrist portrayed by Nicole Kidman certainly meets some of the expectations regarding the relationship between the character and the then version of Batman, played by Val Kilmer, due to the need for a more nuanced interaction. The review states, "By recreating Batman Forever, the comic brings the character back to her movie origins and makes it clear that there is not and never will be any romantic connection between her and the Dark Knight, even when he saves her life. Batman Forever's final choice between Meridian and Robin was a defining moment for that cinematic pairing between her and the Dark Knight and established their romantic relationship. By redefining the motivations between the two in that scene, as well as giving Chase Meridian another, totally separate love interest for it too, it makes it definitively clear that this is not the character from the 1995 movie. This is a modern version of Dr. Chase Meridian for a modern age, and she's the one who defines her own character, not Batman." However, the most likely welcome return of specific characters from Schumacher's Batman era is not the only noteworthy element in the renaissance of public interest in those movies asserted by Akiva Goldsman, as considerable numbers of modern memorabilia and exclusive gadgets yield increasing profits, sustaining the market with Schumacher-related items for his fans. Toy producers, manufacturers of action figures, and suppliers of exclusive collectibles have recognized that there is a sound financial logic of relaunching merchandise connected directly with Batman Forever and/or Batman and Robin. In recent years, the growing legion of Schumacher enthusiasts were able to buy a set of Funko Pop figures. including all the main characters from the Schumacher-directed Batman movies, and even rare variant editions, such as the Riddler, all covered in green and question marks, in the Funko Pop Artist series, or Mr. Freeze's glow-in-the-dark limited edition figurine produced originally for the 2020 Funko Summer Convention. The Funko series was accompanied by other cute items such as Hot Toys Cost Baby 2-pack set including Batman and Robin, re-envisioned in their adorable variety. Yet another line, scheduled to launch in September 2023, is Iron Studios' Minico PVC statues of Val Kilmer's Batman, Chris O'Donnell's Robin, and Jim Carrey's The Riddler. Vehicle enthusiasts may purchase metal die-cast and highly detailed models of the iconic Hans Rudolf Giger-inspired quasi-organic Batmobile from Batman Forever by Jada Toys in 2 different scales. 1x24 with a plastic figure of Kilmer's Dark Knight, or a smaller 1x32 item. For the more demanding and affluent collectors, Hot Wheels trumped Jada Toys with an even bigger Batcar in 1x18 scale and a plethora of additional features. A lighting mode that made the metallic car much more true to screen with its neon-like glow, which brought back the unadulterated, original appearance of a flashy Batmobile from the third cinematic adventure of the 1989-97 era. Still, the absolute must-haves for the most discerning consumers were delivered by superior memorabilia and figure creators Hot Toys Limited and Prime One Studio, who revealed their extremely polished forms of Batman Forever-based statues of Batman's sonar suit from the movie's third act and Robin's original costume, both by Hot Toys, as well as fandom's much-appreciated Panther suit, as worn by Val Kilmer for a substantial amount of his screen time as Batman, by Prime One Studio. These highly expensive and equally desirable art objects, as these masterfully designed items can legitimately be called, premiered in spring 2023 and would be reasonable to assume that even the exorbitant price, approximately $255 for the Hot Toys take and over $1,500 for the Prime One Studios figure, will not deter the most devoted fans, who have patiently looked forward to such impressively made recreations of their childhood. The creator of the YouTube channel Justin's Collection, dedicated to reviews and commentaries on all media-related merchandise, admitted in his video report on the Hot Toys premiere that, quote, "Even though the movie is a little bit campy and a little bit wacky, I grew up watching this film on repeat on VHS, so it does hold a special place in my heart, and thank goodness Hot Toys decided to solicit these figures." This introduction opened with a meaningful quote from Kevin Feige concerning the overall status of Batman and Robin, and perhaps also Batman Forever, which arguably constitutes the direct opposite of all good, acceptable, or contemporary standards espoused today by filmmakers, superhero fans, and professional critics interested in the Caped Crusader, in whichever multimedia format he may appear. The thing that needs to be underscored here, at the very beginning of a book dedicated exclusively to Joel Schumacher's contribution to the superhero formula, erroneously understood as no longer relevant, is that the paradigm of approaching Schumacher's Batman in a never-ending contrast to all other superhero features is in no way efficient, fair, or acceptable today. The core issue in discussing Schumacher movies is that since the very premieres of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, they have been invariably talked about with diminishing contrast to other Batman pictures or superhero films in general. It is argued that those pictures are not as gothic as Tim Burton's versions of The Dark Knight, not as realistic and serious as the more recently acclaimed Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, not as entertaining and universally pleasing as the regular installments of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or that they are totally campy and outrageously silly, like Adam West's Batman, and so on. When looking at Schumacher's creations by way of contrast to the other, apparently more successful or accurate, reifications of Batman or other heroic cinematic depictions, we may lose sight of the essential and still unresolved question that one needs to ask. What is Joel Schumacher's Batman duology really like? I do believe that, over a quarter of a century after the premiere of Batman Forever, regular cinema goers or even professional cinema researchers are still not sufficiently interested enough to engage with those bizarre yet fascinating cinematic experiments which have so much going for them in terms of artistic and cultural patterns. The necessity for such an examination, as I elucidate in the following chapters, is more pressing than ever given previously noted social media interest and possible financial profits. The inevitable conclusion is that people increasingly realize that Joel Schumacher's films are way more complex than befits merely a poor older cousin of today's blockbusters.
Although the main goal of this book has already been stated, it is still necessary to clarify what it is and is not about. First of all, its primary focus is on Joel Schumacher's Batman films in terms of their contemporary relevance and attractiveness, with the presumption that they constitute original and unorthodox conceptualizations of the superhero figure on screen. Attention will then be drawn to certain behind-the-scenes details of Schumacher's work, as well as the indispensable context of him becoming the director of Batman movies, including an overview of his previous achievements and cinematic portfolio. However, one should not expect the following chapters to provide a comprehensive study of Schumacher's filmography, since this would inevitably call for a separate and much more broader scope, going beyond the Batman-related associations and parallels. The main concern here is to elucidate Schumacher's very own interpretation of Batman by any means of the figure of the Neon Knight, a rival category capable of describing Batman's characteristics alongside other commonly known designations such as the Dark Knight, Camp Knight, or Cute Knight. The first part of this book will unfold an origin story, so as to situate the Neon Knight concept within the vast realm of territories occupied by other knights, which make up a truly impressive cultural, artistic, and political multiverse, accrued from different incarnations of what is nominally a stable persona. Subsequently, the book will go on to examine Schumacher's approach to Batman in the light of certain principal categories which continue to inform criticism of that particular concept. In Chapter 2, Section 2.2 will explore the living comic book category, responsible for the Neon Knight's final appearance, as it fueled Schumacher's vision of the superhero cinema as a living cartoon, replete with bright colors, highly aestheticized imagery, and excessive visual and musical trappings. A further section will address the debate on the Batman content originating with Schumacher, which revolves around three different concerns about his impact on Batman's legacy: the toyetic nature of Schumacher-driven Bat franchise, abortive gamification efforts which produced a number of Schumacher-styled game titles, and finally, the director's alleged personal inclination to not understand the Batman character, manifesting in enhanced sexual overtones in his features, namely the appalling presence of bat nipples in the center of the hero's costume. The goal is to approach those issues from today's perspective, without the initial outrage prevalent in the 1990s media and the barely nascent online feedback, to determine whether the notion that Schumacher was wrong in this treatment of Batman and that he essentially failed to understand the source graphic material correctly is still warranted. In the third and final chapter, I will advance an observation that may be absolutely crucial in these deliberations, bearing the categories of cultural memory and the key role of online communities and digital discourse concerning Schumacher's legacy in mind. One must examine the most recent views regarding the phenomenon discussed here from the standpoint of actual taste, sensibility, and, as Susan Boehm suggested, a nostalgic bond, shared by numerous Schumacher fans today. Thus, one can arrive at truly inspiring deductions about the films, perceive how certain allegations or biases change over time, as well as see how the awareness of themes and forms admissible in a superhero narrative evolve. In the closing remarks, I will give voice to Schumacher's enthusiasts and their conceptual efforts to enliven Schumacher-related discourse. I will therefore highlight all the values and qualities which a substantial group of Batman fans found meaningful, citing various excerpts from online discussions and recent colloquy from which appreciation discourse gradually emerged. The subtitle of this introduction is the opening line delivered by Batman's loyal butler and friend Alfred, played by Michael Gough, in the first few minutes of Batman Forever. Over the years, that particular quote has become a single-sentenced symbol for all that is Schumacher-like in the Batman's mythos, feeble humor and an all-too-conspicuous suggestion of a merchandise-oriented narrative backbone that few failed to notice in both Schumacher's films. It feels right to start this exploration of Schumacher's legacy with those particular words, not just because they are the first few words one will hear in his first Bat film, but because it is necessary to confront the two principal assumptions regarding Schumacher's approach: its thematic silliness and shallow commercial motive. However, the intention of this book is not to convince everyone to look at Schumacher's films as deep, serious, or socially relevant. Instead, it will attempt another effort: to explain why exactly, despite all the extravagance and ostentation, those productions deserve a fresh look for being one of the most non-standard and unique versions of a superhero character ever put on screen. The tragedy of the underappreciation of Schumacher's duology lies in its enduring in-betweenness. They are too unorthodox and too bizarre to become general crowd pleasers, whilst being too commercially driven and mainstream to be inducted among underground cult classics. Nevertheless, this peculiar limbo is a major indication that Schumacher's vision sought to venture into spaces that basically no other cinematic incarnations of Batman have ever been interested in entering. It may be encapsulated in one single enigma, and the mother of all Batman-related riddles, which describes the main aspiration of Schumacher's efforts. Why is Batman forever? Therefore, Alfred's question seems apt once again, since prior to unlocking Batman's forever status, one may grab a snack before my analysis starts to unfold, or, to paraphrase the opening scene from the 1995 Batman Forever yet again, it may be necessary to take a drive-through somewhere along the way.